welcome back to another episode of Latinas Power Talk. I am your host, Kenya Vasquez, and today's episode is going to be very, very inviting, very welcoming to everyone. We're talking about spiritual awakenings, meditation, and mental health with one of my good friends, Angelee Lopez, owner and founder of Manifest House here in Phoenix. That is a virtual wellness space. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Kenya. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
It's been amazing. Honestly, we met a few months back at a conference, a women empowerment conference.
Yes.
And I remember since the minute I met you, because we were next to each other in our booths, I just felt this presence and this aura that was so uplifting and so positive. And then come to find out, this is what you do on a daily basis. This is what you're meant. I remember we had this conversation. This is your calling that you found in life. Take us, first of all, explain what you do at Manifest House and what it serves women and the community.
Yes. Well, and I want to start too by saying thank you seriously for having me. It's such an honor to be here. And I know I very much believe in divine timing. And I don't think that it was an accident that we landed next to each other at little booths at that conference. Little booths. Yeah, because we immediately connected. And it's just been so great to get to know you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Yeah. So my company is called Manifest House. I started it 3 years ago. It was due to my own personal experience that I had on my healing journey. So I'm the founder of that space, and we offer live stream wellness events. We have a membership community that's geared towards BIPOC women who are on their healing journeys, on their self-care journeys. 60% of women say that the one person they don't have enough time for is themselves. So that's really the problem that we're going after, creating time and space for women to take care of themselves, to cultivate a sustainable well-being practice, because that's often what, trips us up, is that we do a meditation practice or a journaling practice once and we feel great, and then we forget about it for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
No, for sure. I think you tapped onto something you touched upon something that I've been hearing, honestly, in the last few weeks from a lot of people, that women tend to forget about themselves and put themselves last. I feel like naturally we're just nurturers and we're givers, but we don't give back to ourselves. Why do you think that is?
I think that it is because from a very young age, as little girls, we learn to put everyone else first. We are rewarded for that, or rewarded for being the good, sweet little girl, right? Be seen, not heard. And we also, I think we're also taught that caring for ourselves is selfish. And that was a lesson that was so hard for me to unlearn, that took so many years, and something I'm still unlearning because it's an ongoing journey. But, we're taught that caring for ourselves, dedicating time for ourselves means not taking care of someone else, right? That it has to be one or the other, when in reality, when we take care of ourselves, it allows us to then pour into everyone else in a way that's not sacrificing ourselves too. So it is something that, I've seen just women, especially, I think everyone struggles with this, but especially women, where we're really, that's really ingrained deep within us to take care of our families, take care of our children, and be selfless, to, in many ways, be a martyr to our family. And then I think also when you add on the cultural aspects too, is, we're both Latinas, and that's another element.
Yes, another layer.
You think about, I'm not the eldest daughter, but the eldest daughter in my family, has she had a very different experience than I have? Yes, she has.
Yeah.
And so
I'm the oldest. So
you are?
Yes, I'm the oldest. I mean, I don't have that many siblings. It's just my sister and I. But yes, they kind of do put more pressure on the oldest. Then it comes like the perfectionist, the people pleasing. Because you just have to say yes to everything. You have to be an example for your siblings and for everyone else. And you kind of carry on the name and the example that you're setting forth. Add on another layer of being Latina. It comes with its own kind of like cultural kind of elements tied into it that kind of make it harder for you to really take a step back and say, it's okay to take time for myself.
Yeah.
It's okay to heal from something that has hurt me.
Yeah.
And it's okay to admit it. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think admitting it has been, for me, for example, the hardest part of everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important to name it, to just be able to witness whatever it is that we're going through, right? Whether we're trying to break people-pleasing tendencies or perfectionism, that's the first step, is just noticing, okay, this is showing up for me. How can I witness it without guilting, without shaming myself, without judging myself for that, and just realizing like, wow, I've been doing this since I was 4 years old, since before I can remember, right? These lessons are like very, very deep within me.
And then it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't even know we're doing something,
Yeah.
until someone points it out, or, whatever it may be. But yeah, it's I think accepting it and admitting to it is probably the first step. But tell me a little bit about all the services that you offer at Manifest House for anyone looking for any help or going through, struggling times right now. How can they kind of find you, and what services do you offer?
Yeah, so we offer our, kind of signature offering is the membership. And that is what I started the business with. And the membership is a online space. We have members and teachers from all over the country and starting to expand all over the world, which is exciting. And in this membership, you get access to 13 plus live stream healing events every week. These events are not focused on growing your business. They are not focused on professional development, because what I found was like that was out there already. There was a lot of resources, thank goodness, for women who are growing their businesses and wanting to get better. But there wasn't at the time when I was starting it, there really wasn't enough of these spaces where we just get to be human, where we just get to show up. And I found myself in my journey, I was always putting on this armor and showing up as who I thought I needed to be, instead of showing up as my authentic self.
Who you really are.
Who I really was.
Yeah.
And, I started my career in the corporate world. And I had so much pressure on myself. And I know you can probably relate to this, but I am the daughter of an immigrant, and I was one of the first in my family to go to college, and then one of the first of my siblings to finish college, one of two, and there's 7 of us. Anyway, I just had all of this pressure that I was internalizing to make something of myself, right?
Yeah.
So I went into the corporate world, and I was used to people pleasing. I was used to, acting as this chameleon who could just, what do you want to hear from me? Okay, I got you. Let me, I can figure out what I need to say. And so what happened was I was very successful, right? On paper, I was like working my way up the corporate ladder because I knew what to say. I knew who to be. But at the same time, it wasn't true to myself. And over time, that began actually very quickly. It was within 6 months of being in my first corporate job. And I was like, this is not for me. Like, get me out of here. 6 months. I ended up staying at that job for 4 years because it's scary to take that leap and to like make a change.
Right.
But I kept going. And, over time, my intuition that was started as a whisper of like, hey, you're not in the right place. Hey, this is not you. It eventually turned into a scream. And then I had no choice but to listen, because that's when I started experiencing panic attacks when I was walking into the building at work. Literally, my body was like, you're not supposed to be here. I didn't feel safe. I went through a big period of serious depression. I was experiencing a ton of anxiety daily. I just didn't have the tools to self-regulate my nervous system. And I also knew, right, in my heart that I was so out of alignment. I knew I wasn't in the right place. So, that is really the starting point, the birthing place of Manifest House, because from there I hit a very low point, and I realized that I just had a lot that I needed help with, right? That I wanted to work through. I finally felt ready to look at my past. You know, there were all these experiences that I had just stuffed down inside and then kept going and bottled it up, right? And that's what I had to do to survive at the time, to keep going. So I did what I needed to do. But I got to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm ready. This is in my mid-20s. So I started going to therapy. It was the first time I'd gone to therapy in my life. It was so scary. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
What did your family think of that?
I don't even think I told them.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't even think I did. And I didn't tell them at first because a lot of what I needed help with was related to my family.
Okay.
You know, so it was kind of this thing that I just kind of kept to myself. And that's part of what we worked through in those first years of therapy was like me being able to speak my truth. That was something that I didn't really know how to do at that time, you know. So eventually I was able to talk about it. But yeah, I kept that to myself. I didn't feel the need to say anything. And I think sometimes, you know, when we're on our healing journeys, it's okay to like have that sacred space that's like keep things to ourselves.
To yourself, because you're doing something for yourself.
Yeah.
You don't need the outside opinion sometimes to kind of like put in their 2 cents. You know, it's just like, let me preserve it. Let me do what I need to do for myself and just keep it moving.
Exactly.
You know, that's beautiful. So you touched upon intuition.
Yeah.
I think I'm really big on intuition where that little voice in our head knows better than what we think we know.
Yes.
We just choose to not listen to it. So do you believe that feeling anxious, or like you said, like you couldn't even step foot at your office because you were already having a panic attack or feeling super anxious or like all that, do you think those symptoms sometimes arise from, you know, whoever you may believe in, God, the universe, whoever, kind of like steering you in a different direction that they know is not your path?
So I'll speak from my personal experience. That was my experience. Yes. In that specific situation, I think that those symptoms, the burnout, the anxiety, the panic attacks, they were showing up because I was suppressing my needs. And my intuition was trying to alert me to my needs, right? To shine that light. So I definitely experienced it as that. And, you know, when I actually began to reroute my life, because that's what I did after, right? I went to therapy. I began to explore all of these amazing holistic healing modalities. And my life, over time, I began to just change my life. And I did that by like really looking at, what do I actually want? Like, what is mine? What is someone else's that they wanted for me? What do I really want? And like, what would happen if I left this corporate job that I hate, right? Like, what's the worst that would happen? And so I began to like do all of that like inner work. I ended up leaving that career. Meanwhile, I had wanted to start a business. I knew that's where I was heading, but I wasn't quite there yet. And so I went and I changed careers. So I worked, for a different company that was way more aligned to who I was and my passion and interests. And so by making that shift, even doing that, I noticed those symptoms went down drastically.
Wow.
It really improved my life. And then I've also had some other situations, where I'm not to say I'm anxiety free. That's not it at all, because that's a human emotion that we feel.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because so we can relate, because I have anxiety, like I told you before. And sometimes there's this perception of like, oh, let's just go to this and it'll take our anxiety away. Yeah. No, it's something that, we live with and we have to cope with every day. Some days may be better than other days, but it doesn't completely go away. You just know how to cope with it in a better solution type of setting. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I can relate to you so much of like, your anxiety and your panic attacks stemming from like, you didn't want to be in that place, and just listening to your inner voice. I experienced panic attacks, really bad panic attacks for 2 months. I could not even eat. And that was after college. And it was honestly I'm a firm believer in God. And I think it was God's redirection of saying, no, you went to school for journalism, but that's not really what you want to do. Yeah. You don't want to be a news reporter. Wow. So I think it was a perfect timing in a way, if I really think about it now. of me being able to sit it out for a minute, feel my feelings, and start to say, what is it that I do want? And I remember being in my room and having an epiphany of like, do you even want to be a reporter? Is this what you want in your life? No. The answer was like that.
Wow.
And then everything just kind of starts to settle. It's like this feeling that you're like, ooh, you feel this relief of like, I was carrying something that's not mine.
Yeah.
That was so heavy, and now I can put it down and walk away. You know?
Wow.
So I think, you know, there's power in admitting to yourself and asking yourself what it is that you really want. I think sometimes, especially as Latinas, like you said, like there's all of these expectation of us. Like not only like, oh, going to school and what you're going to be in your career and do for work and everything, but when are you going to have children? When are you going to get married? When are you going to buy a house? You know, it's like a never ending list of things that people always expect from us. And once you achieve it, it's like the next thing and then the next thing. And that's why I think sometimes a feeling of like not being good enough kind of starts to kick in. Because there's just this never-ending list of things. So how does the process work? I want to know, like, okay, you know, someone DMs you or reaches out on your website, and then they go through this process. What does that look like? Take us through that journey. And it may be different for everyone, I'm sure.
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you for asking. So when I do believe that the people who find Manifest House are there for a reason. I tend to believe that. And so, you know, I think the timing has to be right for you, because it is, even though you can cancel it at any time, it does, you know, it's a commitment to yourself. It's an investment in yourself. And so when someone joins, we open 4 times a year, because we are aligning with the seasons of nature. Everything in this modern world is like tied to the, you know, calendar, the Gregorian calendar, starting January, new year, new me. But that's the middle of winter. So if you look at what nature's doing, like for, you know, as an example, that is not a time for new beginnings. It is a time for rest and reflection. And so that's something that I did, you know, early on in my journey, is I started like aligning myself to nature. I started paying attention to the moon cycles and what was happening, you know, in the season. What could I learn from that? Really taking my cues from that. So we flow with the seasons of nature. So right before each season, we open our doors. When you join, you have a assessment that you take that helps you, you know, think about what are your intentions for this self-care journey that you're starting. What do you hope to get out of it? A lot of the times women are joining because they, of course, want to make time for themselves. They want to learn tools to help them navigate anxiety, depression, loneliness. They have this like seed in their heart that they know that they're meant for more, and they want support in, you know, figuring out who they are. Perhaps they're in a transition period, new mothers. We tend to help quite a bit. And so, yeah, we're helping you set intentions. And then you get to really craft the journey. And we, you know, what we'll do is every single week you receive a different invitation. It could be an exercise or a journal prompt or an article. We send you bite-sized things because it doesn't have to be overwhelming, right? Sometimes the other like myth that I hear often in this space is that we think that taking care of ourselves, whether it's self-care or spirituality or even, you know, collective care, we think it's about doing. Like, I have to do more. I have to do more self-care in order to take care of myself, right?
It's going to take time that I already don't have and so forth. Yeah, exactly.
And really, it's not necessarily about doing more. A lot of the times it could be, you know, 10 minutes. It could be 30 minutes that you are dedicating to yourself. And it's really, I mean, I've seen women have breakthroughs in, you know, a 30-minute meditation class, right? So it also is often about doing less. Like, once you start really listening to yourself, you might hear, okay, I'm doing all these things that aren't actually serving me, that aren't actually in alignment with who I am today. And And so sometimes it's about like doing less and creating space for more.
Creating space for attracting more of things that you actually want to do.
Yeah.
Making space for that.
Yeah. And that happens in the stillness.
Right.
In the silence. Like that's where when we're talking about intuition, that's where we hear our intuition. It's not about, I even say that it's not about like doing all these things, that I have to go to this intuition masterclass and I have to learn how to do it. Like, it's actually very simple. Like, get quiet. And so, that's where practices like meditation can really be supportive, because it helps you train yourself and just become more comfortable with like being with yourself, noticing the thoughts in your head, noticing your emotions, noticing when you have anxiety, when you have anger, when you have fear. And that's the first step, right? Because we just have so many devices. We have Instagram. I struggle with it too. I find myself, the doom scrolling.
Yes.
There's so much. So it really takes an effort but that's been my biggest teacher, the silence.
So what I want to know more is about these seasons. Like you said, I think nature comes into play a lot at Manifest House. Where did you first come across these teachings of nature and how it impacts people and their behaviors and their moods and everything?
Yeah. So, I would say various teachers. I started to get really curious after starting therapy. And at the time I really wasn't spiritual, to be honest. When I was kind of, starting, I was still in the corporate world. I was raised religious. And so I had that like religious, background, but I was starting to move away from that because it didn't align with me I still felt connected to God, but the religion piece didn't align with me as much anymore. So it's kind of in this period of like exploration. And my therapist actually ended up being very spiritual. She didn't tell me that at first. She kind of revealed it to me like later on. But I very much trusted her. And so she introduced me to some, just beautiful practices. Then I just started to get curious, and I started to, just connect with like different teachers online. And I also began to really find that I was very connected and resonated well with Indigenous teachings. So, that also tied back to getting curious about my own ancestral roots and like the medicines and the practices, the ancient wisdom that resided in those lineages and those teachings. So that's, and that's a key component of many different Indigenous teachings and lineages, is the connection to earth, the connection to nature, this belief and understanding that we aren't separate from nature, that as humans we we're currently in the modern world, there's a lot of extraction, right? Like what can we take from nature? And that's what's causing just this destruction in our earth and our world. And so, the idea is like, well, if we, think of the birds and the trees and the rivers and the waters as kin, as like part of us, as, equal to us, and we treat it with that reverence, then, it supports us in return. So there's like this reciprocity.
So like, for example, I know you've been posting about the eclipse.
Yeah.
That's going to happen next week. So what are some things that kind of like impact behaviors and moods in those types of settings? Yeah.
So the moon is also a big, factor in what's happening in the cosmos. And what I've found, even though I'm not an astrologer, so I'm not an expert by any means, but it is really fascinating to find that like, and, the membership has helped with this, of just like having this group of women, we're all talking about the same things, right? And interested in these types of conversations. Yeah. Is that we'll start to find like, wow, like, oh my gosh, is anybody else super tired this week? Is anybody else having an extreme amount of anxiety, right? And everybody's like, yes, oh my gosh, totally. Like, and so, when things are happening in the cosmos, it can then impact us collectively. And then there's also, your birth chart is kind of individual to you. So it's like, where were the planets when you were born at the time and day? Yes, it's fascinating. And so that's another layer, because it'll impact you individually. But yeah, I love to, with the moon, I love to look at, because the eclipses are very much like right now what is happening, what sign is the eclipse in. So, it's very specific to that. But in general, with the moon phases, what I love about learning about that is that it is so connected to like feminine energy. There's 13 moon cycles, and most women have 13 menstrual cycles in the year. So it's like there's all these cool, synchronicities and connections. And the new moon is this time of setting intentions. It's the start of the new lunar cycle, and then it ends with the full moon, and that is a time to release and let go. And so it's another way to, and not everybody has to do that, right? If you join Manifest House and you're not connected to the moon, that's fine. The point is, like, we offer these different things that help you figure out what resonates with you.
Right.
And so, that's really, I think, what the spiritual, journey back to yourself, journey home to yourself is what we like to say at Manifest House is really about. It's about figuring out what resonates with you, what feels nourishing to you, because it's a very unique journey.
What has been one of the top, kind of like common themes among Latinas who come into Manifest House?
Yeah. So one thing that I hear consistently from Latinas is working through letting go of being a people pleaser. And I know we touched on that earlier, of something we both have experienced.
Why do you think it's so hard to, let go of people pleasing as a Latina?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'm curious what you think too. The culture often having that expectation of women, right? That women are there to keep everything going, to kind of stay in the background, to make sure everybody's fed, to make sure, the house is taken care of, to now, and it's really interesting too, because there's this statistic about how women are now both the keepers of the house and the breadwinners.
Yes, I saw that the other day. But I do think that people pleasing comes from just, like you said, generational kind of traumas that we just carry on. If you think about it, like in the Latino community, machismo is a big thing.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't, practice that in our own homes now, in our own settings, but it's still kind of embedded in us subtly.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we carry those memories in our DNA from our ancestors, from, they say from 7 generations back, and then you can also impact 7 generations forward with ancestral healing. Yeah. So
7 generations back
and forward.
You don't even know 7 generations back.
No.
But that's how powerful it is, because you have those things from like your great, 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 great grandparents.
Yes.
That you don't even know you have in you because you never once met them, know?
Right.
So it's a lot of like rediscovery.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. And paying attention to our bodies too, right? Of like how it feels in our body, because that's where it's held. It's not held in our mind, because to your point, we didn't know them.
Right.
But it's like our bodies remember them. There's this, have you ever heard of the study with the mice that they did around this? Okay. So I'm not going to remember exactly where the study was done, but there's this really interesting study around this topic, and they did it with mice. And so they did something to the mice where I think it was a smell, and then it's kind of sad. I didn't do the study, okay? I'm just sharing. I'm just a messenger. But they I think they did like a little shock to the mice, and then they did they had a smell associated with it as well. So then every time they would do the shock, they would do the smell. And what they found is that then when those mice had babies, when the babies were exposed to the smell, there was no shock, just the smell, they would feel the pain of the shock.
Interesting.
And it went through 7 generations of mice that had that reaction to that smell, even though they were not part of that initial experiment. So it's really interesting to just, just know that like we carry those experiences from, our grandmothers, but we also carry their strength too. So I like to remind myself of that too. It's not all about, their traumas that we're carrying. We're also carrying their resilience and their gifts and their medicine and their strength. So
yes. No, thank you so much for everything that you do. You're helping so many women.
Thank
you really are. And hopefully, you know within yourself that you're making a difference, because you are, and you're just such an uplifting and positive spirit. And
Thank you.
Blessed to know you.
Thank
I
you,
really
my
am.
love. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And thank you to everyone for tuning in to another episode of Latinas Power Talk. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram at Latinas Power Talk. I am your host, Kenya Vasquez, and I'll see you here next Wednesday for another episode. Bye.